You're alone in a room. No one else is there. You know no one else is there. You checked. The door is closed. The house is empty. Every rational part of your brain is completely certain. And yet, something at the back of your neck goes tight. Your eyes move toward the dark corner. You resist the urge to turn around. And for just a moment, one completely irrational moment, you feel it. Something is watching you. You shake it off. You tell yourself you're being ridiculous. You go back to whatever you were doing. But here's the thing. That feeling wasn't a glitch. That wasn't your brain malfunctioning. That wasn't anxiety or paranoia or weakness. That was one of the oldest survival systems in the history of your species, firing exactly the way it was designed to fire. And understanding why it exists will change how you think about your own mind forever. Most people think the feeling of being watched when nobody is there is a quirk, a bug, something slightly embarrassing about human psychology that we'd be better off without. Wrong. This feeling has a name. Researchers call it the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, or HAD. And it isn't a flaw in human cognition. It is one of the most important features your brain has ever developed. To understand why, you have to go back. Not just a few centuries, not even a few thousand years. You have to go back to the environment your brain was actually built for, the one it's still running on right now. Even in your empty room, even in the dark, picture the African savanna 200,000 years ago. Your ancient ancestor is alone, moving through tall grass at dusk. The light is going, the shadows are long. Somewhere in the trees something moves. Was that the wind? Or was that a leopard? Here is the problem your ancestor's brain had to solve in approximately 1 second. And getting it wrong in either direction had very different consequences. If they assumed predator, and it was just wind, they ran. They wasted energy. They looked foolish to the group. Cost? Minor. If they assumed wind, and it was actually a predator, they didn't run. They were eaten. Cost? Everything. End of genetic line. The math here is brutally simple. Evolution doesn't care about accuracy. Evolution cares about survival. And in an environment full of real predators, lions, leopards, hyenas, cave bears, the brain that consistently assumed something was watching was the brain that survived. Not the accurate brain, the paranoid brain. Psychologist Justin Barrett at Oxford spent years studying what he called agency detection, the brain's tendency to perceive intention and awareness in the environment. His research showed that humans are deeply biased toward detecting agents, things that watch, that intend, that act even when none exist. And this bias isn't random. It's directional. We err towards seeing watchers, not away from them. Barrett called this the hyperactive agency detection device. Hyperactive because it fires more than necessary, more than accurate, on purpose, because the cost of underfiring was always fatal. Your ancient ancestor who felt watched at every rustle in the grass survived, passed down that tendency. And that tendency is sitting in your skull right now, firing in your empty room, because evolution never got the memo that you live in a house instead of a savanna. But predators aren't the only reason this system evolved. There's a second layer, one that goes even deeper into what makes humans human. In a group of 30 to 50 people, the size of every ancient human band being watched mattered enormously. Not by predators, by people. Because in a small group, your reputation was your survival. If people saw you stealing food, you could be excluded. If people saw you being lazy while others worked, social consequences. If people saw you doing something that violated the group's norms, your position in the group, and therefore your access to resources, protection, and mates was at risk. Being watched by other people was one of the most important things that happened to you, all day, every day. So your brain developed a secondary agency detection system specifically for social watchers. For eyes, for the feeling of being observed by another mind. Researcher Kezit Bateson and colleagues at Newcastle University ran a fascinating experiment. They placed an image of human eyes above an honesty box in a shared kitchen where people paid voluntarily for coffee and tea. In weeks when eyes were displayed, people paid nearly 3 times more than in weeks when a control image was shown. Just the image of eyes, not real observation, just the suggestion of being watched. And payment tripled. Your brain responds to the possibility of being observed the same way it responds to actual observation. Because for most of human history, the possibility was almost always real. Someone probably was watching. In a group of 50 where everyone slept in the same space and spent every waking hour together, you were almost never truly unobserved. The rare exception, being completely alone, was so unusual that the brain never fully adapted to it. So when you're alone and feel watched, your ancient social monitoring system is running exactly as designed, looking for eyes, finding none. but not quite believing the absence. But here is the part that goes deepest. The part that explains not just why you feel watched, but why this feeling gave birth to something that changed the entire course of human civilization. Anthropologist Pascal Boyer spent decades studying the origins of religious belief across cultures. His conclusion was controversial when he published it, but the evidence behind it is remarkable. He argued that religion, specifically the belief in invisible beings who watch you, is a direct product of the hyperactive agency detection device. Here is the logic. Your brain is already primed to detect watchers in the environment. It already fires agency detection at every rustle, every shadow, every unexplained event. When something happens that has no visible cause, a disease, a storm, a drought, a mysterious death, the brain doesn't conclude no agent caused this. The brain concludes an agent caused this that I can't see. The invisible watcher, the unseen cause, the being that observes and judges and acts but cannot be directly perceived. This is not superstition that somehow survived, despite being irrational. This is the agency detection system working exactly as it evolved to work in an environment where causes were often genuinely invisible. You couldn't see the bacteria causing the disease. You couldn't understand the atmospheric system creating the storm. You couldn't identify the specific chain of events leading to the drought. But your brain, wired to find agents, found one anyway, an invisible one. Boyer argues this is why every human culture independently developed belief in invisible watching beings, not because they were all wrong in the same way, but because they all had the same brain running the same detection system in the same way. The gods are at their evolutionary root the watchers your had couldn't find in the grass. Here is something remarkable. The feeling of being watched, real or imagined, actually changes your behavior, measurably, consistently, across cultures. It makes you more honest. The Newcastle Eyes experiment showed this, but it goes further. Psychologist Melissa Bateson found that even subtle environmental cues suggesting observation, not just eyes, but anything that activates the social monitoring system, cause people to behave more prosocially, more generously, more in line with social norms. This is why the feeling evolved as a social tool, not just a predator detection tool. In a small ancient group, if everyone felt potentially observed at all times, everyone behaved better, cooperated more, stole less, contributed more fairly. The group that felt watched held together better than the group that didn't. The feeling of being watched, that slightly uncomfortable prickle at the back of your neck, was ancient humanity's internal social enforcement system, built into every brain, running constantly, keeping the group cohesive. You feel watched alone in a room tonight because your ancestors felt watched in the savanna, and those who felt it most strongly behaved in ways that kept their groups together, and those groups survived. And here you are. The discomfort is the feature, not the bug. There is one more piece to this. The reason the feeling intensifies in darkness. In daylight, your visual system can actually scan the environment and confirm no predator, no watcher, nothing there. The agency detection system fires. Your eyes find nothing. The system quiets. In darkness, your visual system cannot check. The agency detection system fires and fires and fires with no visual confirmation available to quiet it. So it keeps running, keeps suggesting, keeps generating the feeling of something present. This is why horror movies are set at night, why children fear the dark, why every culture has stories of what comes in the darkness. It is not irrationality. It is your predator detection system running without the ability to resolve its own query, searching for the watcher, unable to find it, unable to stop looking. Neuroscientist Dean Mobbs at Caltech studied the brain's response to uncertain threat, the kind of threat that might be present but can't be confirmed. What he found was striking. The brain under uncertain threat activates more fear circuitry than the brain facing a certain threat it can see. The maybe is scarier than the definite, because the definite can be responded to. The maybe cannot. Your empty dark room is a maybe, and your 200,000-year-old brain cannot stop treating it as one. Let's rebuild the moment. You are alone, not in your room, on the African savanna, 150,000 years ago. Dusk, you've moved slightly away from the group to collect something from a nearby tree line. The light goes orange, then gray. The grass moves, but grass always moves. Your eyes scan automatically. Your neck tightens. Your breathing shallows slightly. You don't know what a neuron is. You don't know what the amygdala does. You don't know anything about threat detection systems or evolutionary psychology. You just know that something in you is saying pay attention. Right now, something might be here. You don't dismiss it. You don't tell yourself you're being irrational. You listen to it. You move back toward the group a little faster than you came. Nothing was there. Probably. But the ones who listened, who felt that prickle and took it seriously, made it back to the fire more often than the ones who didn't. And their brains, with that system intact, running hot, occasionally embarrassing, passed it down. All the way to you, alone in your room, feeling watched by nothing. The next time you feel it, that irrational prickle, that urge to check the corner, that certainty that something is there when you know nothing is, don't be embarrassed. You are running the most successful survival software in the history of this planet. The system that kept your ancestors alive through 200,000 years of real predators and real dangers and genuine darkness, where real things genuinely watched and genuinely waited. Your brain doesn't know you're safe. It was never updated with that information. It's still scanning the grass, still checking the shadows, still listening for something that might not be there, but might be. And every time it fires, every single time you feel watched in an empty room somewhere in the deep logic of your biology, that feeling is saying the same thing it always said around ancient fires in ancient darkness. Stay alert. Stay with the group. Stay alive. You felt it tonight because your ancestors felt it every night. And because they felt it and listened, you're here. That feeling kept your entire line alive. The least you can do is let it do its job. Subscribe,